Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to Breaking Battlegrounds. I'm your host, Chuck Warren, with Kylie Campbell in studio. Sam is out today. Our first guest, John Reid, running for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, the great state of Virginia, which it's interesting, John, thanks for coming on the show, that you've had such a successful governorship the past 4 years of Glenn Youngkin, and Virginians are thinking about going back to the ways of the past, and Youngkin's approval ratings are pretty good. What's going on out there?
Yeah, Virginia has long been kind of a purple state. We go back and forth over who's going to run things. I agree with you. Glenn Youngkin's had a pretty successful 4-year run. He's brought in a lot of new business, a lot of new jobs. He has managed to avoid some of the ugly political fights that might have been polarizing. And I do think a lot of Virginians are tired of that. You got a group of people up in Northern Virginia, though, who are bureaucrats in the federal government, no disrespect intended, but they are disinclined to be supportive of President Trump, which is why Kamala Harris wound up winning Virginia last year. And I think they are angry with President Trump and, may try to hold us accountable. It's been one of the things I've talked about the months that I've been campaigning is, I'm not going to argue with you about President Trump. I'm here to bring jobs to Virginia. I'm here to bring stability and reasonable thought. And let's not turn this state over to the radicals who've kind of hijacked the modern Democrat Party.
So you're running against a state senator who's running for lieutenant governor who refuses to debate you. So you had to be creative, as all great radio podcast broadcasters have to be. And you did an AI debate with her actual quotes and comments. And I love that her response was, well, you didn't get my permission. It wasn't that you said anything that's not right. It's just you didn't have my permission. She's trying to do the trademark route. Tell us about how that idea, on how it came to pass.
Well, I'm glad you noticed the distinction in the response because, I had to hire a guy to come in and produce the debate because she, for 125 days, refused every invitation to debate. Even National Public Radio, NPR in D.C., offered to host a debate between the two of us, and she refused. I mean, how much more could I rig it in her favor? I agreed to go to National Public Radio because I'm confident in my positions, and I knew they'd beat me up a little bit, but that's part of the deal if you're running for statewide office. So I hired this guy to produce the artificial intelligence debate, and I told him, I said, I don't want this to be a Saturday Night Live skit. I don't want it to be a hatchet job where we find the dumbest thing someone's ever said and we beat them up for that. Let's make sure that these are documented quotes, that they accurately reflect her positions, which I think are foolish positions and discredited positions, but let's not make anything up. We don't have to. And then I'll come in to the studio, no rehearsal, no teleprompter, no script, and I will just respond to the same questions and to her as if it's a real debate. And if people check it out, I thought we did a pretty good job. I was in television and radio, and my mind still works like a journalist. I'm not interested in being unfair to people. So I think I acquitted myself pretty well, especially with no preparation. And I think we were fair to her. And their response that it was some sort of gimmick, well, I mean, maybe it was a gimmick. You wouldn't show up in real life, lady. What do you want me to do? Not have a debate? The people of Virginia deserve to hear from the candidates.
Isn't it frustrating that the media that covers the Virginia political races do not bring up the fact that she's running for cover and refuses to debate? I mean, I think a debate is a very fundamental process of a campaign. And I really feel like if you don't want to debate, you probably shouldn't be running for office. I have felt that for all races. Has the press pressed her on this at all and said, hey, get out there and debate this man? Nothing. They just give her free.
No, and it is,
free
as a
pass.
former television reporter and radio commentator in this market, in the state capital, I have to say I'm disappointed in my former colleagues. You don't have to pull any punches with me. I can handle everything. I'm not looking for special treatment. But if I were to say I wouldn't debate her, I think that would be a legitimate problem, and it's very frustrating. I pull over on the side of the road all the time and take interviews. I pull over and do Zoom interviews. I have not turned down any interviews. So I'm trying to be really, really accessible, not just to the media, but to the public in Virginia. She is campaigning from her basement. When she comes up out of her basement, it's usually to talk to union folks or, people who are likely to vote for her anyway. And they don't seem to have a problem with that. The lack of accessibility, the lack of candor. Whether you like me or not is irrelevant. The journalists should want to have access to the elected officials. And I don't think you should get a promotion to lieutenant governor of the state if you're not willing to make yourself available for questions for the public and from reporters.
Well, we're going to post the debate on our social media, and we want people to hear it. But to give a sort of Reader's Digest version, if people listen to the debate, what are some of the key differences they will find between you and State Senator Hashmi?
Oh, well, they're pretty significant differences. I'm a mainline conservative. I'm a pretty unique candidate because I'll just be honest with you. I don't know if people have read this or not. It's not the biggest deal in the world to me, but it's worth noting. I'm the first openly gay candidate in the history of Virginia to run statewide, Republican or Democrat.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
In your meetings and one-on-one interactions with Republican voters, has anybody cared that you're openly gay?
Well, some people do. I think there's some evangelical Christians who were kind of shocked. They bought into some of the stereotypes, so I break those stereotypes. And there is a moral tug of war for some folks about whether they can support me. But when they go through the checklist of the things they care about, freedom of religion, the freedom of your church to preach what you want to preach, your freedom as an independent contractor to take certain jobs or not take certain jobs, my feelings are one thing, but if I'm running for lieutenant governor, I'm not trying to be the associate pastor of your church.
Correct.
And I'm also not trying to tell you what to do. I'm running for this job because I believe in freedom in America and in Virginia, and that means I got to stand up for everybody's rights, whether I necessarily agree with your evaluation or your equation on things is irrelevant. I have to protect your rights. So I tell Christian conservatives, even if you are concerned about me in a religious context, I don't think you should be, but that's okay. If that's how you feel, I'm not going to argue with you. You should vote for me because I'm actually going to protect you. The Democrats want to force you to accept their analysis of faith and their analysis of what's good and what's bad. In addition, of course, they don't want to repeal any of the taxes. They want to increase the regulations. And this lady that I'm running against, Senator Hashmi, she is the self-described leader of the progressive movement. She wants the boys competing against girls in high school sports. She wants men in your locker room and a restroom if you're a woman. She's the person who wanted to keep the schools closed for an extra year during COVID. I mean, everything we are upset about that the Democrats have done, this one lady has been the forward tip of the spear for the progressive movement. I don't think she deserves a promotion. I actually think she shouldn't be at the Capitol anymore.
I want to go back to your debate that I rudely interrupted you about when you were getting into it. But how don't voters realize this about her? I mean, she's doing the things that basically elected Glenn Youngkin. What are voters not getting out there?
Both Abigail Spanberger and Ghazala Hashmi, my opponent, I mean, they're They are from the radical wing of the Democrat Party. Every leftist idea they have embraced, and yet they go out and pretend that they're somehow moderates. And it's incumbent upon me and, Winsome Sears to expose those differences. We want to get rid of the car tax, which is the most hated tax in Virginia. I used to advocate during COVID giving everybody a break for at least 3 or 4 months from the gas tax here in Virginia, because while the rest of the society was working from home, quote unquote, in their underpants, in their living room on computers, the real working people of Virginia still had to get their truck, and the prices were through the roof. But the Democrats refused to even give them a break on the gas tax for 3 or 4 months. This is the prime example of the difference between the modern Republican Party, which I would argue is looking out for the working people. It's one of the reasons Donald Trump did so well for them. And the Democrats, who are beholden to a leftist set of policy agenda items, which are not looking out for the working people. They're really kind of oppressive and don't match up with the moral equation that a lot of Virginians believe in.
So going back to the debate, and folks, again, we're with John Reid. He is Republican running for lieutenant governor in Virginia. If you have family or friends in Virginia, make sure they get out and vote for John. He's a common sense conservative, a Reagan conservative. So all those who moan and groan about Trump realize that you got a Reagan conservative there as well.
I actually worked for the man.
Yeah. And
out in California, after he left the White House, I was his last press aide.
Were you really?
Yeah, it was an amazing job. Didn't pay anything. I was 22 years old at the time. But when I talk about being a Reagan conservative, that's what I mean.
I feel there's a book in there somewhere. But with John Reid, who's going to write a book on being Ronald Reagan's last press aide, we got about 2 minutes left in this segment. What are a couple differences between you and her besides those you've mentioned, like on economic policy and taxes?
Well, there's a very huge issue that's coming up, and a lot of people aren't paying attention to it. It's called the right to work. Here in Virginia, we're the northernmost state on the eastern seaboard that has the right to work. That means if everybody around you wants to join a union, which is your business, not my business, I'm not here to tell you what to do. That's a common theme for me. I'm not here to tell you what to do. You can join the union. But if you're one of the people who doesn't want to join the union, in Virginia, you have the right not to join the union. You have the right not to have those union dues taken out of your paycheck every 2 weeks. You have the right not to sit down for a meeting with the union boss from New Jersey who is going to try to take over your company. If we get rid of the right to work, all of that goes away. And that is bad for the employee. But what's more important for everybody to understand is that's been the magic reason that governors like Glenn Youngkin, George Allen, Bob McDonnell, Jim Gilmore, all of the great Republican governors, and the Democrat governors used to agree, don't touch right to work. That's how we get companies to come to Virginia. That's how we get them to open a regional distribution center with, 500 employees, is the right to work being a part of the law in Virginia. And the Democrats have promised to do away with it. I mean, there's no ambiguity. I'm not making that up. That is what they plan to do. That'll kill the economic ecosystem of Virginia. That'll hurt workers. It'll hurt the state economically. And for some reason, these economic illiterate social justice warriors like Ghazala Hashmi either refuse to accept it or really don't care.
I don't think they care. We're with John Reid. John Reid, he's Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in Virginia. You can follow him on X at John Reid, REID, number 4, VA. We'll be right back for another segment with John. This is Breaking Battlegrounds.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. I'm your host, Chuck Warren. In studio with me is Kylie Campbell. We are honored to have with us Republican Lieutenant Governor candidate from Virginia, John Reid. John is neck to neck with his opponent, liberal progressive Senator Hashmi. And John, something's happening interesting in Virginia that the Democrats out there have trying to do their best to imitate Gavin Newsom in California and go against the will of the people of Virginia on redistricting. What's happening? How real is this? How big's the threat?
Well, look, if you step back from what team you're on, team Republican, team Democrat, I get it. People are frustrated that the rules of the game from a redistricting standpoint are changing in other states. What's happening here in Virginia, though, is that we did what a lot of states wish they could do. We passed a constitutional amendment with a 2-to-1 vote in Virginia, where we took the partisanship out of the redistricting, at least as best you could. We sent it to an independent commission so that it wouldn't be decided by the politicians themselves. The same people, you don't want the politicians drawing their own lines. I get it. That makes sense. I agree. So that's what we did. We took it away from the partisanship. And now the Democrats in Virginia, during the middle of the campaign, right here with 1 week to go, they're calling all the legislators back to the Capitol. Guess what? Including the Republican who's running for governor. So she has to leave the campaign trail. Tell me that's not calculated.
Exactly.
Tell me that's not dirty tricks. She has to leave the campaign trail and come back to the Capitol to preside over the state Senate while the Democrats attempt to overturn the will of the people. And they're trying to act like, we're just responding to what the other states are doing. You know what? This is Virginia. We passed a constitutional amendment. The will of the people has been expressed. The voice of the people is on record now. And I think people are not going to respond well to having what they intended overturned at the last second before a big election. And with this nefarious plan to take all the Republicans off the campaign trail. Now, the good thing is I'm not in the legislature, so I'm going to be campaigning 3 times as hard over the next week on behalf of everybody else, and I'm going to expose this dirty trick so that everybody knows.
Do you think voters know about this?
Well, it's getting out there, but it's a little complicated. You know,
Right.
I mean, it just took me 2 minutes to explain it. It's not a simple.
It's not
thing.
an elevator pitch. It's not an
I
elevator
think
pitch.
some people also are mad about Texas and North Carolina and other states, so they think, what's good for them, we should do here in Virginia. No, I always hold Virginia to a higher standard than any other state. We are the birthplace of American liberty. We have a standard to uphold, and we did years ago what these other states say they want, which is take the politics out of it. So it's really disingenuous to act like you're speaking on behalf of the people when what you're doing is it's a naked power grab that's happening right now, and I think it stinks.
We're with John Reid, Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in Virginia. He is running against liberal progressive Democrat Senator Hashmi. So she's done a couple of votes that are amazing. She voted to give tuition and licenses to illegal aliens. How has she responded to the criticism of that?
She won't talk about it. She won't talk about it. And the press isn't asking her about it. So I'm the one that's got to spend what little money I have trying to expose that type of corruption. And let me tell you, the Democrats want Virginia back. This one woman has raised $5 million, probably more than that now. And it's all kind of cloaked from different groups in D.C., so we don't know exactly where it came from. It's the Lieutenant Governors Association, whatever that is, in D.C. And Republicans had better step up their game here in the last week, not just in Virginia, but across the country. This is going to set the tone for the midterms for Congress next year.
100%.
Whatever happens here in Virginia, the headlines are going to be either trumpeting a success or heralding additional failure. So that's one reason why, as exhausted as I am, because I started this campaign on January 27th, and I have not taken a day off since, and I am tired. But I got to fight for my home state, because if we lose these protections and if we see another round of bad laws come into place, it's going to be almost impossible to repeal the bad laws. And I'd hate to think of what the state would look like if that transpires.
Folks, we have John on Zoom, and I'm telling you, if we all look this good, being as tired as he is, you're a lucky person. State Senator Hashmi also voted to reduce penalties for assaulting a police officer. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, listen, she is so anti-cop, it's unbelievable. And again, she won't talk about it. But, if you assault a police officer, there used to be serious consequences. She has systematically joined with the most leftist regime within the state Senate to try to reduce all the penalties. I mean, that's just one of the things she's done. One of the other things she did was vote for a bill that would go back and recalculate everybody's time in jail. And I was just in the county jail here doing a tour of the drug rehab program. Very interesting. I'll tell you about it sometime. I want to be open-minded and thoughtful about how we can help people who have made a mistake in life get back on the right path. But what I'm not willing to do is take violent criminals, people who've already committed a murder, who've already committed a rape, recalibrate their time and put them back out on the street early. And one of the horrible things that has happened just in the last 5 years, since 2020, when Ghazala Hashmi voted for this criminal justice reform, which was anything but, we've had 53 Virginians killed now by people who were let out early. 53. Now,
over what period of time? Over what period of time?
Just in the last 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
In the last 5 years. I mean, we warn people this is not a good plan. Okay, somebody steals a cell phone. All right, we'll let them out early. I'm not going to fight with you over that. But no, my God, if you're committing violent crime and we want violent crime to stop, we have to punish the people who do it, and we have to send a signal to the people who are on the bubble there that we're not tolerating it. And we messed it up with the Democrat leadership twice now. And now there are 53 Virginians who didn't need to be dead who are. I think there should be political punishment for these people having such bad ideas that they push through, even when responsible leaders say, stop. Let's negotiate this. They wouldn't negotiate a damn thing.
But
they
how
just pushed it on through.
John, we've got 2 minutes left here. Let me ask you, so much to talk about with you, but let me ask you this. You have been a anchor, a reporter for 2 decades. What has surprised you being on the campaign trail versus what you thought you knew as an anchor and as a news reporter?
Well, when I started in television, I was in Waco, Texas, and then I came back here to Richmond, the state capital. It was a very robust press corps covering campaigns and legislation. And, there was a real interest in that civics aspect that you can only find in a state capital. And so many people have left the profession. No offense to the new people, because I was very young when I started too. But you have a lot of people who, don't have the institutional memory that's probably necessary to cover these races appropriately. And a lot of them appear to be kind of all-in advocacy journalists from the left. And that's frustrating because I do there's no candidate in Virginia who's spent more time talking to the reporters than I have. And that's because in general, I try to start out respecting reporters and I want to be open to the public and I want to demonstrate that. And so the fact that they don't want to cover significant issues, not just partisan issues, but significant issues is really frustrating for me. And we won't survive if we don't have a robust debate over ideas and a fair debate over ideas. One thing about me is I want to be fair with everybody, and I hope I've lived my life that way, and I've demonstrated it in this campaign, I hope.
John Reid, thank you for joining us. Folks, you can learn more about John Reid at johnreidforvirginia.com. You can also follow him on X. John, go out there, have a great week, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time to talk to you.
Thank you. Breaking Battlegrounds will be right back.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're honored to have with us again our friend Gary Gigi. He is the president of Gigi Capital Management. You can find him at gigicapital.com. G-Y-G-I, capital with an A.com. Don't mess up your O's and A's with capital, folks. Gary, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Good to be here. Thanks, guys.
All right. So I don't know where to start in this economy. The one thing with Trump, you wake up every day and nothing's boring. right? You sort of one day, I think, Kyle, you and I were talking about a couple weeks ago, just be nice to have a boring day, right? And nothing's boring about this man. So now he's in China. Sounds like we have a framework for an agreement, things of those nature. But something that really would be helpful for Americans, for the construction industry, everything, is if the interest rates got lowered.
Absolutely.
Do you feel we're going to see a 0.5 cut, or what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. So a 0.5, which is 0.5%. No, Chuck, I don't. And I think that we're probably going to get 1/4 point. We call that 25 basis points. And so historically, the Fed has moved incrementally. When it raises interest rates, it does it by 1/4 point each time, usually. Same thing when they're lowering rates. It's usually 1/4 point. If they're doing more than that, that can spook the market.
Oh, okay.
And so right now, the market is expecting it. There's like a 96% probability, the market says, that we're going to get a 25 basis point or 1/4 point reduction this week. If we were to get 1/2 point, the market could get freaked out because it thinks, things are worse than what we think.
Great point.
And so now the market would probably sell off thinking that the Fed is behind the curve. If it's 25 basis points or 1/4 point, I think the market takes that in stride and just goes, okay, we may not need it, but we want this. And so we're probably gonna rally. And so small stocks in particular probably gonna rally the most, just because small companies have to go to the public lending areas in order to fund their businesses all of the time.
Right.
So if all of a sudden they're borrowing at lower rates, that's going to make them a more profitable. So assuming we get 25 basis points, 1/4 point, I think small caps rally hard, and the other stocks will probably rally as well. If it's 50 basis points or 1/2 point, my feeling is the stocks probably sell off.
That is a great point, and it makes a lot of sense, especially since we supposedly have a China trade truce.
Yes.
The S&P's rallied 1% today, and it's probably going to close over 6,800 for the first time. So,
looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big deal, right? So,
yes.
What do you think would be an orderly reduction by the Federal Reserve on the interest rate? Do you think eventually over 6 months to a year, what do you think they should do, and what is basis what you think they should do and what is possible?
Okay, so the market does a really good job of predicting stuff like this. So right now, the market is expecting 1/4 point this week. It's also expecting another 1/4 point reduction in December. So that's 1/2 point before the end of the year. It's expecting another 1/2 point perhaps by next June. So within the next 9 months or so, then the market is expecting a full 1% drop in interest rates. They could be wrong, but right now that's what the markets are telling me, is a full percentage point by about next June.
And what does that mean for economic growth, a full percentage point, if done by next summer?
Yeah, so obviously the equity markets are going to love that. And so it's like a tailwind on the stock market, because you lower interest rates, and not just the small companies, but everyone's profitability increases. So you'll see a nice rally in stocks. Now, who's not going to like this very much are the savers.
Sure.
And so because it means that people that have their money in savings accounts and CDs at the banks are earning less on their money. And so they're the ones that will probably be unhappy. I'm assuming mortgage rates will come down, but the Fed doesn't control the 10-year Treasury. So when they lower interest rates, they're lowering the shorter term. And interesting thing, Chuck, the last 2 times that the Fed has lowered interest rates, mortgage rates really didn't come down that much.
No.
They stayed right where they were. And lately the market has pushed rates down, which means that people were buying bonds and the yield went down. So I am hopeful that the market would respond positively over the next year to lower interest rates. Therefore, mortgages become more affordable and people start buying homes more. That's the best case scenario.
Gary Gigi, president of Gigi Capital Management. You can follow him at Gigi Capital. gygi.com. Again, that's G-Y-G-I, capital with an A.com. Gary, thanks a million. Have a great weekend, buddy.
Have a good day, guys. Talk to
Appreciate you.
soon.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
buddy.
you. Bye.
This is Breaking Battlegrounds. We'll be right back with Anna Giartelli at the Washington Examiner. Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chains disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. For our final segment on the show today, we have a friend of the show, a great reporter with the Washington Examiner, Anna Giartelli, and she covers the border for the Washington Examiner. She's been there over 60 times, and she also has a book coming out next year. First, Anna, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you have a piece out today that Trump is building a smart wall on the border. What does that mean?
Yeah, the wall it's Trump 2.0. It's taken a step up. This one is smart, right?
Right.
During the first Trump administration, we saw over 700 miles of wall funded, about 450 completed. A lot of what was built was the wall, right? But the technology side of things wasn't completed by the time Trump left office. And then President Biden canceled the remainder of the contracts of what was supposed to be finished. And so even in the 4 years between Trump's first term and second term, technology has changed. You and I both know that. AI
Right.
is now in regular Americans' lives. And so now they are adding in not just the roads that are necessary, the lighting, but technology that would blow your mind, a lot of machine learning. So stuff that even 4 to 8 years ago would be fading out now, not as relevant. And so that is what makes this whole process, in addition to adding a lot more physical barrier, 18 to 30-foot steel wall, adding in a lot of the smart technology. So it makes it go beyond just a barrier, but something that really works for agents and helps them do their job.
Repeat for our audience again, how many more miles of wall do they plan to build in his first term?
Trump promised to finish the wall. He wanted to. They have about 300 more that was funded and not completed. This time they've been able to put $5 billion towards this new project going on. They're not going to finish the wall, but they will have technology across the entire 2,000-mile southern border, which is a lot more than we have right now.
By the way, how is the border right now? We talked about earlier this year that he had basically shut it, but we expected a major push in the spring and September and March and April. How is it going? How are crossings going?
We did. I was stunned this spring. I gave the cartels a few months to kind of keep their eyes on things with the Trump administration just taking office, but we didn't see that surge that we even expected to see. The number of people who are crossing the border illegally and being caught by Border Patrol are at 55-year lows. So back to 1970s, the last time we saw this few people being apprehended. We're seeing roughly between 5,000 and 10,000 arrests at the southern border every month. During the Biden administration, we were seeing 100,000 to 250,000 arrests per month. So it's a huge, huge drop off.
So we have gone as a country, and the Trump administration has pushed hiring more ICE agents. They've given a lot of type of bonuses and pay your college tuition, and they've had roughly 175,000 people apply to be a ICE agent. And I'm sure there's a lot of good people, but there's been a report that they have hired people with criminal backgrounds. How does this happen?
I looked into the report, and it's true on its own, but I looked into it just to figure out some more answers, and it is true. What I couldn't figure out, even from the folks I spoke with at ICE, was who's to blame for this? Was it within ICE, the hiring, or is it within the entire government, the hiring and vetting process? Who's to blame is the entity within the massive federal government who is doing the vetting or the lack thereof. These are people who are not disclosing criminal histories and such in their applications. These people are being sent through very quickly and hired. This is at a time where you have 175,000 applicants for ICE. You have 10,000 job openings. So you should be able to take the very best of the best and get them through training and out into the field in the next year. Instead, what we've seen are, like you said, people with criminal histories, various problematic paths, being brought right into Flexi, which is where ICE new officers and agents train before they're put out to the field and then sent home. In one case, I heard of a guy who was about 375 pounds.
Oh my gosh!
And he came to the academy, and they said, "Can you do the challenge course? Can you do this?" And he couldn't. And so they said, "Well, you're going back home." Another case I've heard of someone in a wheelchair showing up at the academy, and they said, "We can't make an accommodation for this." And so those are simple things where there was clearly no one brought in to do a job interview. Because, one of the important factors as a law enforcement officer is you have to be physically fit. You have to be able to, a lot of cases, run after or just, be in a position to be able to run after someone.
I think if I had a criticism of the Trump administration, and I love the speed they're moving at things, that sometimes you need to count to 10 before you enact certain things. And this seems like this process on hiring. Let's count to 10. Make sure, because what he is doing, half the country is very upset about. A third are absolutely maniac about it. And you just need to make sure that these people have a clean background, that it does not bring a disservice to what ICE is really trying to accomplish. And they just hurt themselves when they rush these type of things through. All right. So
exactly.
Last time we had you on, you shared a very heartbreaking story about us, how you were sexually assaulted in D.C. a couple years ago. And now you have a memoir coming out, Under Assault, a crime reporter's true story overcoming sexual trauma and exposing injustice. Folks, this book will come out April 4th, 2026. We will have copies to send to our listeners. And that's the anniversary of the attack. What made you come to that decision to print this book, to print your story, and what do you hope is accomplished with the book?
Yeah, my publisher thought I was kind of crazy, but also, to pick April 4th. I said, well, what better day to take back than a day that's been a horrible day in my past, and that's now getting a new meaning. Yeah, the point in writing the book was I really see myself as a tree for the forest, as a sexual assault victim.
Okay.
Even sexual harassment is so prevalent. And as a crime victim, to have what happened to me and have my attacker released from jail 5 times immediately before we went to trial, and then have my case not included in D.C. police stats, even though the man who attacked me was sent to federal prison. I think my story is one that so many people can relate to in different ways, unfortunately. And the more we talk about it, the more that people see, I too have a similar story, or this has happened to me, or I didn't know I wasn't being counted here. And, it's something that also is a story of redemption and grace, and being able to, my faith in Jesus Christ has been a huge part of my journey and moving forward. And there is redemption and there is a better life after something terrible happens to you. And that's one of the other messages in the book.
As you've reflected upon that horrible moment, what is something about it that you have a better view of, a better hindsight of? What did you learn about yourself?
I think it was the moment after the attack, the hours after that was worse than the attack. It was me realizing I really believed that bad things were meant to happen to me. This is in the book, but I was sexually assaulted as a 17-year-old. That same week, about 17, 18 years, 13 years earlier. And so when this assault happened, I came back to my apartment, gave the police my clothes, sitting in my apartment by myself, kind of like, well, now what, And it hits me that this is something terrible that also happened to me 13 years ago, the same week in April.
Oh, my gosh.
And so the story I began to tell myself was, bad things are coming for me. I'm not a lucky person. I'm not, just it's not good. And what I took from it and been able to reframe, through therapy and then knowing my identity as someone that God created was, no, bad things are not coming for you, but believe the truth, and looking at how this was the worst day of my life. Right. And it's being used for something better and bigger. And I'm in such a different place than I was, 5.5 years ago. And I can say that now, but it's taken certainly a lot of pushing through to get to that place. But it's wonderful to be able to truly believe there is no bad thing coming. This is, this is the life you make it, really.
There's over 400,000 women who are sexually assaulted, abused annually in the United States. And that number is much higher because these are only those who report it. Based on your experience, what can law enforcement and the legal system do to make this, it's never easy, but to help women who have been through this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in my case, charging the defendant with as serious a charge as you can matters. So not pleading it down, not getting less time, those things matter. I think, special victims and sexual sex abuse crime, those teams within police departments who take it really seriously and want to see those people put away. But a lot of the times their hands are just tied by the courts. And so I think one of the ways that police departments can help the public understand that this is, like you said, it is the most underreported crime of all types of crimes, is to include those stats, right? So my assault was a 3rd-degree sex abuse crime. In D.C., they include sex abuse crimes on the police stats that are 1st degree and then some 2nd degree. So it looks like over the past year, you've had 50-something sexual assaults in D.C., which out of 800,000 people, you and I know that's not possible.
No.
And so, so when you're watering down the stats, you're not valid. You don't need to validate, but you're taking away. This was a horrible encounter I went through. And I think the idea that, it's only bad enough if it was rape, or if it's only bad enough if it was this, takes away from how dehumanizing it is to have a man hurt you as a woman in that type of way. And so I think police departments can really better serve the people who pay their salaries by including all those types of sexual abuse charges and crime incidents and stats. Because otherwise, why are we arresting and prosecuting someone if it's not going to be included in the crime stats at the end of the day?
We're with Anna Giartelli. She is a reporter for the Washington Examiner. She is coming out with a book in April, Under Assault, a crime reporter's true story overcoming sexual trauma and exposing injustice. Anna, we've got about 90 seconds left here. What do you want people to get out of this memoir?
You know, I'm finishing the book right now. I signed a book deal in September. We just announced it, and I'm finishing the book. And that exact question is what I've been writing through. You know, I'm not trying to start some new Me Too 2.0. I would love to see women support women more. I would love, you know, in a dream world, I would love to see police departments say, you know what, from now on, we're putting all the stats out there. We're putting all degrees of felonies on our charts. We're not going to downplay what's happened to victims because it wasn't as severe as others. And I'd like to see, you know, sexual assault and harassment. These are things I think as women, we just assume, well, we're going to be harassed. It's going to happen. Or I was assaulted, but I was at a party, so I don't know. Maybe it wasn't his fault. Those are the things I want to see women say, no, this isn't okay, period. This is just not okay.
It's never okay. It's never okay.
And see the culture shift towards it. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, Anna, thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you again on the show soon. And, of course, we would love to have you back in April to talk more about the book that you're working and finishing. Thank you for your bravery. We appreciate you. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. You can follow us at breakingbattlegrounds.vote. And for those who loved your time with us today, the podcast is coming out for extra bonus stuff. Have a great weekend.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, 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 ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa has a podcast. Just press play.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're going to talk about a subject that many of you don't pay attention to. Some do on our social media, but it's an important subject, and we want to give you a little background on it. We're here with the great Henry Olson, who follows these things for you, so you really don't have to, but he is going to give you a uninformed person guide to what's going to happen in Argentina, why this election was important, why this election was important to Trump, why it was important to the United States, and once again, how polling was off the mark. So, Henry, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Henry, we had this election yesterday in Argentina. I'm sure a lot of Washington was watching it with a bated breath. And the free marketer, Milei, won. And he won pretty well, 10 points over what prognosticators were saying. Tell us what happened and why this is important, what happened.
Yeah, well, what basically this was their version of the midterm elections, is they had 1/3 of their Senate seats and 1/2 of their House seats up. And the expectation going in was that he'd be lucky to kind of eke out a narrow victory, and said he won a landslide, dramatically increased his party's share of the vote, and dramatically increased his party's power in both houses of Congress. And why it matters is it means the free market revolution that he has been introducing, over undoing 80 years of statist, Peronist economics, will continue. He'll be able to sometimes get majorities in Congress, and certainly they have an active decree law that gives the executive legal power to do a lot of things without congressional approval. And he now has clear minorities that can sustain vetoes that try to overrule his decrees. So the libertarian economic revolution in Argentina will continue until for at least another 2 years, until he comes up for re-election.
So he basically has 1/3 in each chamber now, right? They have like a Senate and Assembly, correct?
Yes, they have a Senate, and they call it the Congress of Deputies, their version of the House. He's got at least a third of the Senate, and it's harder for him to, because just like ours, their senators last for 6 years. So you've got people who predate his election who are still holding Senate seats. But he's got nearly half of the House, and with allies that he can bargain with who are not hard leftists. He can put together majorities from time to time. So he's in a stronger position in the House, and he's in a very good blocking position in the Senate.
A little trivia here I looked up. He won that by about 2 million votes over the next, against the Peronistas, okay, who are basically, they've been in power, 80 years?
On most of the 80 years, what'll be interesting is that since the return of democracy in 1983, there have been non-Peronist winners, but they have never won re-election. And so if Milei wins re-election, he will be the first non-Peronist to win re-election since before World War II.
So he beat that party in the midterms by 2 million votes. Trump beat Kamala by about 2 million. I know that's going to melt down a lot of our listeners, but that's what happened down there. I was reading the Wall Street Journal article on it this morning, and they were quoting some people that they just simply said, we can't go back to the past like we've had. Our country can't afford it anymore. I don't want family fleeing our country. I don't want, they had one young man in law school saying, look, I'm in this because Argentina is my home. I don't want to leave. Tell our audience why what has happened that people like that say, I don't want my family to flee. I want to stay here. This is my country. Why have people fled Argentina in the past?
The thing is that Argentina, starting back when Juan Perón took power in the 1940s, has had a state-driven welfare state economy. And that predictably creates inefficiencies and creates a lack of wealth. And then in order to keep people happy in the short term, they boost up the money supply and they create hyperinflation. And so for 80 years, they've had this boom, bust, hyperinflation cycle that has brought what was once one of the richest countries in the world to being a middle income country. And in the last bout of Peronism, it got to be awful, like 300 or 400% a year inflation. Everyone's upset when it hit 9%
right.
in 22. Try imagining 9% a week, okay?
Right.
And so what happened with Milei is people finally had it. They were willing to try anything. And I think that's what they see is that Milei did radical things that even the non-Peronists before had not done. They went through a very deep recession when he was cutting spending, and now they're going through a very rapid recovery, and inflation is down. Now it's still ridiculously high, but only 30% a year compared to 300% seems pretty good over an 18-month period. And I think people like that Wall Street Journal were interviewing saying, look, we've seen what it's like. We've seen that the other side does not fulfill its promises. And I'm going to give this guy a full 4 years to see whether he can give me hope again. And the alternative would be yet another boom bust hyperinflation cycle, which would mean that people, I think, would say, well, we've tried everything. We've tried the left, we've tried the center right, we've tried the extreme right. It's just time to go.
Democrats, because of the shutdown, keep trying to use this horrible talking point. Trump found $40 billion for Argentina, but he can't find money for SNAP. First of all, $20 billion of that's a loan. He didn't give anybody anything. Second of all, Secretary Bessent has said that he's going to go to the capital markets and raise the other $20 billion from private capital. Can you explain to our audience who may be concerned about this and have naively fallen for the Democrat talking points why we're just not giving them money and why we had to do this?
Well, we had to do this because what was happening was in August, there was a regional election in the largest province, which happens to be the Peronist stronghold. So a loss wouldn't have been surprising, but Milei's side lost the regional elections by 14 points. And that made a lot of people overreact and think, oh my God, he's going to be losing ground in Congress. They'll be able to stop his revolution and we'll go back to Peronism. And people started to have a run on the peso, which is their national currency, expecting a return of Peronism. And they tried to stop the run with their foreign currency reserves, and they couldn't. And so what this was necessary was to prop up the value of the peso, to give the Argentines hope that that perhaps Malay could survive. And that's one reason why Malay won, is that people knew that the peso wouldn't crash, hyperinflation wouldn't return, and they were willing to give them another 2 years. It was necessary to do because we need allies and markets. Argentina is one of the physically largest countries in the world. It's hard to think about it because it's so far south, but it's the sixth largest country in the world by area. It's got massive wealth, agricultural wealth, mineral wealth. If they had a properly functioning economy, it could be an industrial power. And with Malay, they are massively pro-American. And so what this was, it was keeping an ally that can become both a source of American investment to help improve the economy, which obviously will run a trade surplus, which will help the American balance of payments, and also to help them develop so that we can show other countries in Latin America, hey, you don't have to turn to a drug trade or something. Embrace free markets and industrialization the way Malay did, and you'll make your countries rich. And that would have a side benefit on migration, immigration,
Correct.
and on the drug trade. If these countries could make themselves wealthy, you wouldn't have hundreds of thousands of people trying to come here and other people illegally coming to sell drugs to American consumers. Instead, you'd have them doing productive things in their home country.
Well, you've summed up my last question, but I'm going to let you give me the political bumper sticker post of it, okay? We're with Henry Olsen. And Henry, as we close this interview, and thank you for coming on last moment, explain to MAGA why it is important for us to be involved at times. Doesn't mean we have to do it all the time, but why it's important that we get involved in things like Argentina.
Well, America first doesn't mean America only. America is a wealthy country, but we are in part a wealthy country because we trade with other countries. And it's one thing to say that other countries have been ripping us off, which they have, and Trump is trying to reorder that. But it's another thing to say that, everything we do, we can produce at home and consume at home. We'd be much poorer if we did that. And showing Latin America, 400 million people, including Brazil, that free market revolutions is a way to make themselves rich means that we could open up a massive trading partner for us that would make them richer, but more for America first, make us richer, and do it in a fair way. So we start the trading relationship without the huge, massive giveaways that we did in the 80s, 90s, and the aughts. And then geopolitically, you don't want to be the world's policeman running around trying to solve other people's problems, but you cannot win a battle with China alone.
No.
What you need to do in the Cold War, ultimately we won because our side had 70 to 80% of the world GDP, and we could just grind the Russians down. Our side, those countries that were stuck by us, have less than 60% of world GDP because of what we've done in improving China and the third world. If we cut ourselves off from our allies, Europe, Japan, Korea, and so forth, and they latched on to the Chinese could do to us what we did to the Soviet Union. And Argentina is a small part of that. And again, it's an example that if we can help make Argentina rich, we can attract other countries, say, hey, you should be in the American orbit. You shouldn't be in the Chinese orbit. And that keeps us safe from the only threat we really need to worry about, and that's the communist invasion.
Henry Olsen, thank you for coming on last minute today, and I hope you agree with me when we recommend to our audience do not watch the movie Don't Cry for Me, Argentina with Madonna.
Watch it. I've watched it. Beautiful scenery, wonderful costumes, Andrew Lloyd Webber. Just don't expect to see a great acting.
No. As a matter of fact, when I went to see the movie and found out it was a musical, I just slept for 2 hours. So, Henry, anyway, thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend, buddy.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Appreciate you. Well, Kylie, it's Kylie Corner time. Jeremy, kick us off.
Talking about crimes and the ones committed, murder and mayhem in a world of sin and oh. on a roll. Kylie's got a corner and she's gonna start spilling about all the true crime in the world we're living in. So come and take a spin and listen in.
Okay, I have a good one for you today.
Oh,
Well, actually, I
good.
have two. I have an update, and then I have a good one for
They're
you.
always good. Go ahead.
So I have an update on Christopher Schultz. He was the dad who left his daughter in the car in Tucson, and she died.
Oh, yes.
I originally was coming in here all fired up because last week the judge had ruled that the prosecution couldn't use the fact that he was watching porn when the daughter was in the car. And I'm like, this is after the judge also approved of him going to Hawaii with his family
Right.
after the daughter has died. But he has since taken a plea deal for second-degree murder, which he's turned down a plea deal prior to this back in March, which was 10 years. He turned that down. So now he's looking, he took a plea deal now for 20 to 30 years in prison. But something's still like a little fishy. I don't know what it is, but I think we're going to have to keep an eye on this case because I want to see what his actual sentencing is.
I wonder if the wife just came out and said, I'm not defending you on this. I'm going to testify.
She's just as guilty.
Well, I agree, but she's a doctor?
Yeah, she's an anesthesiologist. But right after it happened, the daughter was being rushed to the hospital and she texted him and was like, how many times have I told you not to leave the girls in the car? So she knew that was something
I almost
happening.
wonder if it was an abusive relationship.
Well, definitely
he
is.
seemed to have this power over her, but he literally killed his daughter through pure negligence and just being uncaring.
And then she still went to Hawaii with him with the two surviving daughters.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's just weird. All
Yeah,
right.
weird.
Weird is the word.
All right. Now my next one.
Okay.
I don't know how I've never come across this before, but I
Okay.
was like, this is good. So in 2004, there was an analyst out of the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation who had discovered a pattern of murdered women being dumped along Interstate 40 corridor through Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and Mississippi.
Oh, yes, I saw this.
And so this eventually led to the FBI creating the Highway Serial Killer Initiative. Have you heard of this?
The Highway Serial Killer Initiative. No, I have not. Continue.
Me either. So in 2004, they started this initiative. And last year, in August of 2024, the FBI announced the initiative has led investigators to look closely at a certain profession, which is long-haul truckers. So they believe that there's a handful of serial killers operating as long-haul truckers, and they're likely responsible for 850 murders.
850?
Yes. And so far, there's been 25 truckers that have been arrested and put in prison. But data indicates there could be another 450 long-haul truckers who are out there who are sexual predators or just like to kill. In which, by the way, I was driving when not last year, but the year before when I was driving from Phoenix to Boston, I saw a truck and it said something like, don't piss off a truck driver. They know places to hide a body that you'll never find.
Right.
We might have been in Oklahoma. But yeah, so this is something going on. There's a couple cases that I started reading about of guys that have been arrested. And the first one was Chester Todd. He's accused of a series of 4 murders running through 1995. And he was just found in 2011 under an alias name. Then we have Wayne Allen Ford, who turned himself into police, and he had severed breasts in his pockets.
In his pockets?
In his pockets.
When was this?
This one was in 1998.
Okay.
And he admitted to 4 murders, and there's 3 that they believe, based on the dismembering of the bodies, that he's also responsible for those ones. And this one is the most horrific one. But Robert Ben Rhodes, he built a torture chamber in his truck, and he would murder couples that were hitchhiking through Utah and Texas. But there was one hitchhiker, she was a 14-year-old girl, that this is like horrific, so warning, skip through this if you don't like this stuff. They hooked her up with fish hooks inside of his rig, like in the back of his rig, and just drove around with her across different states and raped and tortured her until just abandoning her in a random farmhouse.
Well, the truck stops are quite known for being dens of iniquity, I guess we can call them.
Yeah, so they're most like the women that are being killed are sex workers or hitchhikers, and they're young women, and but they believe that this is just there are thousands and thousands of truck drivers, and they're all not bad. I want to preference that.
99% of these folks are
but
good,
there's
hardworking
450.
people. It's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
But, no one really pays attention to a trucker per se. It's amazing how big of the rig is. You really how much you sort of ignore it.
Yeah.
You just sort of go. I mean, no one goes when you're driving and just looks up at the truck, or you just want to get around the truck, right? So it's a fairly innocuous. You're hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
It's big, and you just when you're driving and you're doing a road trip, you just want to get around them.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you're a kid in the backseat and you're like trying to get them to honk.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how many kids do that anymore. I used to do it all the time as a
All the
kid.
time.
Because there's nothing to do in the car
No,
then.
now
they're
there's flat
on the
screen
iPhones.
TVs.
Yeah, they have flat screen TVs and phones. Well, that's interesting. What's the initiative called again?
The Highway Serial Killing Initiative. So we'll have to keep an eye on this.
Well, it sounds like it's rich fodder for your show.
They've
your
only
segment.
got 25 out of 450. I started Blacklist. So when I was reading this, I was like, I kind of imagine there's like a task force that just like wakes up every day and they go after a new truck driver. But probably not every day since they're only at 25. But that's what I'm picturing.
Interesting. Well, Kylie, thank you for the show today. Thank you for that. Folks, thank you for joining us this week. Hope you enjoy this show and hope you share it. We'll have Anna back on the show when her book comes out in April of 2026. We're going to leave you. We had John Reid, Republican candidate for lieutenant governor. He's really neck to neck with a very progressive state senator who basically pushes everything people in Virginia say they don't like, but for some reason they're neck to neck. And he was quite creative because she has been avoiding debating him. The press is, of course, not doing their responsibility and pressing her on why she's not debating him. So Republican John Reid did a debate where he hired somebody to do AI and just took all her quotes, and he went into a studio and debated the quotes. Yep. And he wasn't prepared. He just went and did it off the cuff, which he has the benefit being a 20-year reporter and radio host. But we're going to leave you to listen to that, and we ask you to share that with your friends and family and anybody you know in Virginia so they can make an informed choice, because it sounds like the press is not doing their job informing people of her positions. On behalf of myself, Jeremy, Kylie, we hope you have a great weekend. You can follow us at breakingbattlegrounds.vote on Substack or wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us on this unique occasion for an exchange of ideas between the two candidates running to be the next Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. First, the Republican candidate, Mr. John Reid. Welcome, Mr. Reid. Next, the Democrat candidate, State Senator Ghazala Hashmi. Senator Hashmi, are you there?
Good to be here. Thanks so much.
Okay. First, let's get to opening statements, starting with Senator Hashmi.
I'm running to be Virginia's next lieutenant governor because voters need someone who has the experience, knowledge, and ability to fight for Virginians, especially given the chaos coming out of Washington. I have a track record with regard to the issues that Virginians care about: education, healthcare, housing, and opportunity. I am ready to make policy that will make Virginia an example for other states.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Well, it's too bad that Senator Hashmi won't appear for a real debate. If she's not willing to engage in her own campaign for lieutenant governor, I don't know why anybody thinks that she'd be able to fight for anything in Washington, D.C. And indeed, the things that she has fought for in the state Senate are the things that most Virginians don't like keeping the schools closed for an extra year, like pushing for boys and girls sports, advocating for men in women's private spaces, higher taxes, releasing criminals early. Everything that we would identify as a problem in the state of Virginia, Ghazala Hashmi has pushed. Now, you compare that to me. I'm someone who has worked at the highest levels of the federal government as communications director in the U.S. Senate, as communications director at the United States Chamber of Commerce, working with business people all around the world and in the United States, from the Fortune 500 companies to the smallest mom and pop startups. I know what these businesses need to try to grow their business and increase jobs. And that will be one of my key priorities, not just gaveling in the Senate, not just working on legislation with senators, but advocating for the state of Virginia. And with the chaos that Ghazala Hashmi references in Washington, D.C., and the fact that we're $37 trillion in debt, you need someone like me at the state capitol in Richmond who will try to bring additional jobs to Virginia rather than burden businesses and folks who are trying to grow the economy.
Our first topical question tonight is about the economy. Virginia currently is one of the top 5 states for business, according to CNBC's annual economic report. However, with recent cuts to federal jobs, which have affected millions of Virginians, analysts worry about Virginia's economic stability going forward. What would you do to help bolster Virginia's economy as Lieutenant Governor? Senator Hashmi?
I want to make sure that Virginia is prepared for the future as the economy, technology, and the workforce evolve. We need to expand access to quality childcare and make it affordable. Government should ensure that families have home health care and elder care. We also need to mandate that workers receive compensation at an acceptable level. I believe that a living wage is a fundamental right for workers and their families. Accordingly, we need to institute living wage here in Virginia.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Well, how can you tell me that you know nothing about the economy and business without actually admitting you know nothing about economics and business? Senator Hashmi just did that. Talking about a living wage sounds good, but it doesn't accomplish anything except the loss of jobs. Mandating that businesses provide child health care, childcare and health care does nothing for the actual workers except cost them their jobs. The solution here is to create non-government programs that enable and empower businesses and the individual employee, not create additional government regulations that make it harder for citizens to work. And I'd point out that I'm the only candidate who every week has unveiled policy positions, including on child health care, providing opportunities, tax credits for people who need them. It's called the Reid Revolution. I hope you'll go online and take a look at the proposals that I've issued. I think you will find them to be reasonable and responsible. They won't break the bank. And most importantly, they will inspire business people to come to Virginia and grow their economies, grow their businesses, and increase jobs rather than mandate programs that will crush job opportunities in the Commonwealth.
One matter specifically that could affect Virginia's competitiveness in the market is what is commonly referred to as right to work. By this policy, workers do not have to join a union or organized labor group for the sake of employment. At present, Virginia is a right to work state. Would you be in favor of repealing right to work, yes or no? Senator Hashmi?
Support all efforts to repeal right to work. States that don't have right to work laws generally offer better working conditions and outcomes for employees. In Virginia, right to work restrictions affect wages, benefits, and overall job quality. Many workers and most of the general public don't understand how labor laws are central to better economic outcomes. As Lieutenant Governor, I will always push for legislative changes for workers' rights.
Mr. Reid.
Senator Hashmi says that the general public doesn't understand labor law. It's clear that she doesn't understand economics. And when she's advocating doing away with the right to work, she is advocating crushing the working class in Virginia. How do I know this? Her own party used to agree. Chuck Robb, Jerry Beliles, Doug Wilder, even Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, all Democrat governors advocated for the right to work, which means that the worker decides whether they join a union or not. It means that the worker decides whether money is taken out of their paycheck and siphoned off to the labor union, which, by the way, then goes to some nefarious political activities that many people wouldn't agree with. I stand with the working people of Virginia. I want the person who goes to work every day to make that decision for themselves. That's important for the working people. It's important for businesses. If we're bringing businesses to Virginia, the reason they're coming is not just that we have a beautiful beachfront and we have the mountains. It's because they can do business here without being dictated to by a labor boss from New Jersey. And Senator Hashmi is advocating changing that law to a point where no one will want to come to Virginia, and we will lose businesses to Tennessee, which, by the way, doesn't have an income tax. So we're giving up the number one reason that businesses come to Virginia, the northernmost state with the right to work. And it is a reckless and irresponsible decision. I suspect that Senator Hashmi actually knows that, and her friends at the labor unions will reward her for this position that she's taking. I will always stand with the working people of Virginia.
Another economic matter is minimum wage. Right now, Virginia employers must pay employees no less than $12.41 per hour. Are you for increasing the minimum wage? Why or why not? And if so, to what? Senator Hashmi?
I support raising the minimum wage to at least $15 and establishing an alignment of wages with inflation and cost of living. I have championed efforts to increase the minimum wage and supported legislation to eliminate minimum wage exemptions. When workers receive a living wage, those dollars go back into the community, supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Mr. Reid?
Well, at least Senator Hashmi recognizes that money that's paid to workers does fuel the economy. But what she would actually be doing by raising the minimum wage to $15, and many in her party are saying $20 or $25 an hour, is kill jobs. Once again, we're dealing with people, Senator Hashmi, with all due respect, who have no clue about how a business works and no understanding of economics. This sounds like a very good idea if you're economically illiterate. Raising the minimum wage would cost low-income workers their positions. The young man who pops the popcorn at the movie theater would lose that job. The popcorn would then be imported to the movie theater. There would be no position for this individual. So this is another really foolish idea that has the potential to crush those who are just beginning in the workforce or trying to move their way up the ladder and try to work to a better wage. And I'm so distressed that Senator Hashmi continues to propose ideas that have been tried in other places that have cost thousands of people their jobs, including in California, where one of the basic jobs, no offense to anyone who works in fast food, now all of those positions in California have been replaced by computer terminals. That may be coming anyway, but there's no reason for us to push for that to happen sooner and faster. Let's give workers an opportunity to start with an entry-level job and continue to grow their way in the business economy of Virginia. Senator Hashmi clearly doesn't understand it. Once again, I will stand up for the working people and the working families of Virginia.
In 2021, the Democrat-led Virginia General Assembly and then Democrat Governor Ralph Northam decreed that Virginia would follow the California-based electric vehicle mandate, whereby all vehicles sold in Virginia must be zero emission by 2035. Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin and Republican Attorney General Jason Miyares canceled this decree last year. If you become Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, would you be in favor of reinstating the EV mandate, yes or no, and why or why not? Senator Hashmi?
Wholeheartedly support an electric vehicle mandate. The effects of human-caused climate change are happening, and Virginia must address the climate catastrophes that face us. Reducing carbon emissions and transitioning to renewable energy sources are imperative for the sake of environmental justice.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Yeah, I don't think anybody even understands what environmental justice is. And I do think Virginians understand government mandates. No one in this state wants the state government dictating what type of vehicle they can drive. No one in this state needs Ghazala Hashmi or a Democrat governor telling them how to live their lives. There's no one in this state who appreciates the environment more than I do. Some folks laugh when I talk about how I'm an Eagle Scout and I've spent more time out camping in Virginia than most people unless they're in the Marine Corps. I appreciate the environment of Virginia, but I've also traveled around the world, and I know that the position that the Democrats in Virginia, that Senator Hashmi would put us in, would not make us more competitive as a state. It would not protect and preserve the environment of Virginia. It would send us into decline economically. And those who are in decline economically cannot keep up with the transition that's necessary to keep our air and water clean and protect the environment of Virginia. These are very poor decisions that Virginians have rejected time and time again when they've been asked. And Senator Hashmi is on the wrong side of dictating to the average person in Virginia what they must do in their own home, in their own life. I'll stand up for your personal freedom.
Our next topic is schooling. Opinions differ on the role that expanded school choice should play in Virginia education. Quite simply, are you in favor of expanding school choice for families? Why or why not? Senator Hashmi.
I am for fully funding Virginia's public schools. Private school vouchers and tax breaks take money away from our public school system. School choice unevenly benefits wealthier families, which can afford the remaining private tuition costs. Meanwhile, less affluent families in public schools are left with fewer resources, thereby increasing educational disparity. I am committed to protecting public education for all Virginia schools.
Mr. Reid, your thoughts?
Well, I'm a public school person. My father was a middle school principal. My mother was a public school teacher. I went to Henrico County Public Schools from kindergarten through 8th grade. I then went to a private school, which was very expensive. I know about these very expensive tuitions. That's why I think it is time for us to tell the truth to each other and admit that there are some wonderful schools in Virginia and there's some schools that just aren't cutting it. And I think it is wrong, Senator Hashmi, to mandate that someone who is in a neighborhood where a school system is failing or an individual school is failing, for them not to be able to remove their child and give them another opportunity with the tax money that has been allocated for that child. Not all of it. We're already doubling the amount of money we're spending on public schools. $21 billion in the latest 2-year budget. That's double what we were spending just 5 years ago. And Senator Hashmi doesn't think that the individual parent should have the opportunity to move their child to a better school. This plan of school choice will provide new opportunities and competition and will hold school systems accountable for good results for their students. Senator Hashmi, once again, is standing up for teachers' unions, not for the students. One thing you can count on from me at the Capitol is I will be looking out for families. I will be looking out for students, not for the teachers' unions.
On a related note, Governor Youngkin has opposed Democrat efforts to incorporate certain controversial texts and books into government grade schools as a matter of course. Democrat leaders have equated Governor Youngkin's stance to censorship. Governor Youngkin counters that he is protecting the ability of parents to consent to what their children read. What is your view regarding this matter? Senator Hashmi?
We oppose attempts to ban books from our schools. We've had superintendents who actually remove books from school libraries, which is why I wrote the bill to stop banning books. As Lieutenant Governor, I will oppose censorship, and I will advocate educational best practices for curricula.
Mr. Reid.
Well, that's absurd. No one is talking about banning books. Everyone in modern America can order any book they want to. Protecting children from controversial topics that are not age appropriate and protecting young people from being exposed to pornographic material, which is exactly what is happening in some of our public schools. That is not censorship. That is protecting young people. And it is time for us to have leaders at the Capitol who are discerning enough to know the difference. You're not banning books. You are saying that age-appropriate material is what should be in libraries. And anyone who wants to order a book and have it delivered the next day to their home, that's certainly a possibility for them. So I wish we were in a place where we could be honest about what's happening here. This is a play to try to inflame tensions in the classroom and there is no reason for that. Responsible people used to all agree we protect the innocence of young people as long as possible. And I will add, the teachers need to be focused on the basics of reading and writing and basic history and science and preparing young people to hit the age of 18 and graduate with all of those skills and be good citizens. This distraction about censorship, alleged censorship, when we're talking about actual pornographic material is absurd, and it is counter to everything we should be doing to protect young people and families in Virginia. Once again, I have to stand up for families and let parents make these decisions instead of bureaucrats in the school system.
Follow-up question, broadly. Who should be in charge of children's education in Virginia? Parents or legislators? Senator Hashmi.
I'm concerned about parents who think that they can legislate what their children are reading in school. That's the job of legislators, people like I am, not the job of parents.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Well, I know there are a lot of parents who would disagree with you, and they have made their voice heard time and time again. We used to be able to trust those who led our school system to focus on the basics of reading and writing and science and history and basic civics. But now we have a school system which is infused with political dynamic that is divisive and causes individual students to hate their own society. It's time for us to get back to the basics, and it's time for us to empower parents to make these decisions, not bureaucrats. I have said consistently that I think one flag belongs in our schoolroom. That's the American flag. We don't need the BLM flag. We don't need the gay flag. We don't need the transgender flag. We need to take all of the controversial social justice issues, which people like Senator Hashmi have made a living off of, and get those out of the classrooms and make sure that we prepare students to be wise enough to make their own judgment as they interact with their own parents and their own families, and that the values of those families are the values that are passed down to the next generation, not that they are indoctrinated by school officials who clearly have ideas that don't match up with where most Virginians are.
A debate has raged in Virginia for a number of years now over policies related to the transgender phenomenon among our youth. What are your positions in regard to transgender access in government-run schools to bathrooms, changing rooms, sports, etc., and transgenderism in general? Senator Hashmi.
We need to look out for and protect the rights of our transgender children. They have a right to be addressed with pronouns of their own choosing. Boys identifying as girls have the right to compete on the playing field where they feel that they belong. Trans kids have the right to use the restrooms and changing rooms where they feel most comfortable. Last but not least, trans minors have the right to get the surgeries that they need so as to feel as though they're in the right body. To oppose the trans rights of children is to deny them their personhood, deny them their identity.
Mr. Reid.
Look, I'm the most open-minded person probably who's ever run for statewide office. But I will tell you, when it comes to young people, this is confusion. It is gender dysphoria. These young people deserve counseling that will help them feel comfortable in their own body. And most of you are aware that I'm a historic candidate. I am the first gay person in either party to run statewide and to be on a ticket, Republican or Democrat. And I am telling you, after 30 years of having been around what I consider to be a very damaging, almost insane political agenda, this is not the direction that we should take. Young people deserve to be protected. The fact that Senator Hashmi would stand up and say that she agrees with the idea of mutilating the bodies of perfectly healthy young people instead of helping them work through what many of us used to call teenage angst indicates that she has been completely bought into the most radical ideas in our society. Most parents do not agree with that. Now, once you turn 18, it's not my business what you do. I don't need to be in your bedroom. I don't need to be associated with the decisions that you're going to make, even if they're important. But we have an obligation to protect young people from making dramatic decisions that a reasonable person would conclude they would regret in the next few years. And I will stand up for young people. I'll stand up for parents. And the idea that we're going to keep this secret from parents and not involve them in these types of issues is very troubling to me. It's another thing that I think should be disqualifying for Senator Hashmi and, quite frankly, many people in her party.
In the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling in Dobbs v. Jackson, states have assumed jurisdiction over abortion access. Currently in Virginia, public policy largely permits abortion through the second trimester of a pregnancy. However, the state will not pay for a woman to have an abortion in almost all cases. Would you, as Lieutenant Governor, be in favor of expanding or contracting legal access to abortion in Virginia? Senator Hashmi.
I will never stop fighting for reproductive health care, including access to abortion and contraception. We have to ensure that women have access to the health care that they deserve. This is why I sponsored the Right to Contraception Act to protect women's freedoms.
Mr. Reid.
No one is attempting to restrict your right to contraception. The problem that Senator Hashmi has is she has been supportive of this absolutely outrageous constitutional amendment, which allows day of birth abortion. And I have traveled around the state, unlike my opponent. I have put almost 100,000 miles on my car talking to people who don't necessarily agree with me, unlike my opponent. And I have talked to many people who are pro-choice, who have said, yeah, the idea of murdering a baby on the day that it is to be born is a step too far. So we're not even having the conversation that we've had for 40 years about first and second trimester abortions. Virginians are voting about whether or not they think a child should be killed on the day of birth. And I think that crosses a line even for pro-choice women who believe that this is a civil right. The other thing that is very problematic is that Senator Hashmi and her party have created an amendment which will prevent parents from being engaged in that decision if a minor has to make the decision about an abortion. And, you know, even if you're pro-choice, even if you don't agree with me on the life issue, even if you're a little left of center, I think most parents would want to have some consultation and judgment before their minor daughter makes that decision. And I'm going to stand up for parents again and for young people so that responsible decisions are made. And this amendment is the most extreme law, certainly in the United States and perhaps in the world. And the Democrats know exactly what they're doing. And this is reckless and irresponsible, and it needs to stop.
Gun violence continues to make headlines throughout our country. The violence has even turned partisan of late, with multiple assassination attempts against President Trump and the killing of activist Charlie Kirk in just the last year. How would you help combat gun and political violence in Virginia if you become her next lieutenant governor? Senator Hashmi.
Tragically, mass shootings continue to increase, and gun violence is now the number one killer of our children, more than accident or illness. I am committed to doing everything I can to stop the proliferation of guns and reduce the violence and number of deaths. I strongly support universal background checks, strengthened red flag laws, and banning assault weapons, which are weapons of war.
Mr. Reid.
Well, Senator Hashmi, with all due respect, the problem is not the law-abiding gun owners in this state. The problem is that there are Democrats like you who are in prosecutorial roles who refuse to actually prosecute violent crime. So individuals who commit a crime, who demonstrate that they are violent, are released I don't like to assign bad motives to people, but perhaps you think you're helping these individuals, but what you're doing is not giving them a second chance in their life. You're giving them a second chance to victimize additional people. In city after city after city, we see these results, and the results are terrible. It is time for us to punish individuals who commit crime, to punish them harshly, and to make sure that the message goes out to young people and to adults alike that we're not going to tolerate criminality. We're not going to tolerate violence. We're not going to tolerate murder in our society. This is not a gun problem. It is a people problem. And there is a way to deal with it. We have proven over and over and over again that by being tough on those who commit crime, we will watch the crime rates go down. We should also make an effort, and I would encourage you to go to the Reid Revolution on Substack and look at the plans that I propose to deal with mental health care. Mental health care is a problem. We should spend some time thinking about why we have created a society that seems to create many, many troubled individuals. The strength of the family probably needs to be evaluated in every policy we're creating on the state level and the federal level. Are we putting together policies and proposing policies that strengthen the family, where there is someone who can monitor children, who can work with children and mentor them, identify problems before they turn into major problems where you have criminality or violence or anything else that would be harmful to another citizen? I think I have the right approach. I think Senator Hashmi and her friends in the Democrat Party have consistently won their argument and pushed things through the legislature, which have put us in a much more dangerous situation in Virginia. It's time for that to stop.
On the subject of political violence, I would be remiss if I didn't address the unearthed text messages that Senator Hashmi's ticket mate, Jay Jones, wrote about former Virginia House of Delegates Speaker Todd Gilbert and his family. Jones insinuated that Speaker Gilbert was worse than Adolf Hitler and deserved to die. Further, Jones indicated that he wished death upon Gilbert's children, whom Jones referred to as quote-unquote little fascists. Jones wrote, and I quote, "Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy." Senator Hashmi, what do you have to say about your ticket mate's remarks?
Jay will need to take accountability for the pain that his words have caused.
Should Jay Jones drop out of the Attorney General's race, Senator Hashmi? I guess that's Senator Hashmi's answer. Mr. Reid, is Jay Jones unfit for office?
Yes, Jay Jones is unfit for office. That has now been on display for everyone to see. And this is another moment where Ghazala Hashmi and her Democrat friends have refused to take the steps that a responsible person would take to say it's time for Jay to step aside. This is not just a collection of words that are offensive. These are actual threats of political violence. We've seen assassination attempts. We have seen Charlie Kirk's assassination. We have seen members of our own House of Delegates, Republican members of the House of Delegates, threatened with death. I had that happen to me while I was having a press conference, live on the internet, a death threat against me. Now there is a consistent decision that I have to make about whether I wear a bulletproof vest in public. In Virginia, this is outrageous. The Democrat Party of Virginia, the Democrat Party across the United States has a violence problem. And I will say, with all due respect, Senator Hashmi, you should have been one of the leaders to say that Jay Jones should step down, and you should be calling upon the people in your party to be peaceful. We're never going to agree on everything. I accept that, but we should not tolerate political violence with a wink and a nod and say that it doesn't matter when someone is revealed to have said something as horrible as what Jay Jones said. It's a reckless position that you're taking. To me, it's a disqualifier, not just for him, but for you as lieutenant governor. And I would say the same thing about anyone who's running for office. If you can't denounce this, then you have no moral compass at all. And Virginians should reject you to be in a position of leadership.
In recent months, with President Donald Trump's return to the White House, we've seen a crackdown on undocumented immigration. Here in Virginia, Governor Youngkin has offered his cooperation with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, aka ICE, as it attempts to deport undocumented immigrants from the country. If you become Lieutenant Governor, would you favor or oppose continued cooperation with ICE? Senator Hashmi.
That Governor Youngkin's decision to help ICE was absolutely reprehensible. Our sheriffs and local law enforcement shouldn't be assisting with the policing of international immigration. No, our sheriffs and local law enforcement should be protecting our citizens on issues of public safety.
Mr. Reid.
Well, that's what our sheriffs and our law enforcement are doing, is protecting citizens with public safety issues, because some of the people, not everyone who comes here illegally, find themselves committing crimes. And if they have committed a crime, it is incumbent upon our law enforcement and our courts to assist in enforcing the law. Let me be clear, since no one else in the state of Virginia seems to be capable of saying it. We all have to obey the law. And that means you do, Senator Hashmi, I do. The people who are working in a factory have to obey the law. The people who run businesses have to obey the law. This is a key discussion point that I think we need to get through as a people. You must obey the law. And these are not new laws. These laws have been on the books for a long time, and we are now dealing with the consequences of not actually enforcing the law fairly. So you have millions of people who would like to come to the United States, who are going through the process correctly, who are paying attorneys, who are waiting in line to become workers in America and hopefully American citizens. And then you have people who have jumped the line. And then you have people who are criminals from other countries who are here. It's time for us to clean up this situation and to be very strict about who is in the country. That, again, is not bigotry. That's called being responsible. That's called being a responsible leader. And I think Governor Youngkin has been absolutely correct in mandating that law enforcement actually enforce the law, and all of us will be in a better position, even those who are here as immigrants, if we actually enforce the law and get rid of the people who are committing crimes. It's very easy. It is not complicated, and it's offensive that Senator Hashmi continues to try to equate immigrants who came here legally with those who came here illegally.
A final topical question. Obviously, both of you want to be Virginia's next lieutenant governor. What is your impression of Virginia and the electorate here? Senator Hashmi.
I do suspect that most voters in Virginia, people who voted for Glenn Youngkin, are racist. Racism is so latent and so much a part of the society in Virginia. Accordingly, Virginians are susceptible to racist dog whistles, the likes of which we heard from the Youngkin campaign 4 years ago, for instance.
Wow. Mr. Reid?
Well, that's an outrageous and offensive comment to make. And anyone who looks at the people of Virginia and has that attitude about them should not be a leader of the people of Virginia. And I think it is time for someone to say something important about this issue, and I guess I'll be the one to do it. Simply disagreeing on important issues does not make one a racist. And I, for one, am tired of leaders like Senator Hashmi constantly equating a disagreement into a racist motive for individuals like me. It is time for us to unite as a people, unite around good jobs and economic prosperity for all of our citizens. And it's very unfortunate that Senator Hashmi has actually articulated something that insults most of the voters of Virginia. Glenn Youngkin is a good person. Glenn Youngkin has done a good job as governor. I think he has attempted to treat people fairly. And it's outrageous that Senator Hashmi has articulated a position like that.
Okay, time now for closing statements. Senator Hashmi.
Really, I haven't much more to say. based on the policy positions that I've advocated here, as well as my experience serving in the Virginia Senate, I believe that I am the best person to help lead the Commonwealth of Virginia as we move forward.
Mr. Reid.
Well, let me say it's pretty shocking that this artificial intelligence debate is the opportunity for most Virginians to hear anything about the woman who is seeking to be lieutenant governor on the Democrat ticket. That is shameful. It should be disqualifying. Senator Hashmi and her attempts to hide from the media and from the public and from her Republican opponent and actually daring to say that I'm not a legitimate candidate is extremely offensive. I'm glad we had the opportunity to expose the irrational positions that Senator Hashmi has espoused, and I'm glad that I get to share my experience as a person with a degree in political science, as someone who's worked for a former president of the United States, as someone who has run communications at the highest levels of government at the United States Senate, who has worked with businesses all across the country and around the world with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who has lived in other nations. I've been to 113 countries around the world. I'm probably the most open-minded and well-traveled person who's ever run for office in Virginia. And I think that that will bring me experience as a broadcaster, as an international businessman, as a compassionate individual who has a very unique story to tell in the role of lieutenant governor. And I will end with what I share as I travel across the state. We're not going to agree on everything. It's completely okay. Unlike most politicians, I'm not here to make you bow down to me. I'm not here to make you obey the positions that I take. I'm here to offer solutions economically and culturally that I think will put us in a better position as we compete with other states. And I will look at every issue that comes before the state Senate if I'm entrusted with the role of lieutenant governor, if I have to break tie votes about whether it expands the freedom of our individual citizens and whether it makes us more competitive in a very competitive business climate in the United States for Virginia to be successful. I will be reasonable. I will be responsible. I will be respectful of people, even if I disagree with them and they disagree with me. And most importantly, I will endeavor to make every decision by being fair to everyone in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that's why I'm asking for your vote to be the next lieutenant governor. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
This concludes tonight's virtual debate. I'd like to thank the candidates for being here. Mr. Reid?
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Senator Hashmi?
You bet. Bye-bye.
Remember, the polls are open and will be through Tuesday, November 4th. Get out there and vote, everybody. Thanks for watching, and good night.